Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, June 28th, 2021 City Council meeting. I've been reflecting lately on observations I've had about things returning, and I made a list I just wanted to share with you, and I'm sure all of you have your own lists. But during the pandemic, obviously, all of our arts performances were all shut down. And I recently attended the performance of Shrek at our own community center. It was performed by Ashland Productions, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. So I attended my very first art performance since the pandemic, and that was really encouraging. Also, our nature center, with the help of the city's Nature Center Task Force and obviously key staff leadership, we are planning to reopen the Nature Center in September. We have merged our Parks and Rec and Nature Center into a new department called the Parks and Natural Resources Department. Stay tuned, everyone, for more information. You can check out our website, and also I'm sure we'll be posting some things in the monthly Living magazine that comes out to everyone about that. That's exciting. Fireworks is returning to Maplewood on July 4th, this very next week. It will be a little different than in the past. There'll be no food trucks, no bouncy houses, no band, but we will be having fireworks, and that's a first step back. So that's really exciting. I hope to see all of you at Hazelwood Park in Maplewood after dusk for what is, I think, going to be a really wonderful fireworks display. City Hall is going to be reopening July 6th. That's our DMV. You can check out our city website for additional information on that and what that's going to look like. So that's pretty exciting. And finally, council members, we're finally going to be able to have an in-person council meeting. The very next meeting we have on July 12th is going to be in person. And I look forward to doing the city's business with all of you in person in the same room and not sitting and looking at the Brady Bunch on my iPad. But I think it's going to be wonderful for all of us to get back together. There'll be a whole new rhythm, and I think it's going to be great to be able to share some synergy with you when we're all seated in the same room. So all of those things are happening. I'm sure you each have your own things that you can observe and that you can reflect on as to things that are returning. And we are definitely seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So at this point, let's do our Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Sable, would you please take the roll call for us tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Juneman.
Here.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson.
Here.
Councilmember Cave.
Here.
And Mayor Abrams.
I am here as well.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Council members, we need to approve our agenda tonight. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Juneman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? And council members, in order, round robin, Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
No, this is for discussion, whether or not you want to add anything. Sorry, I should have made that more clear.
No, that's okay. No, I don't.
Okay, Councilmember Juneman.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Knutson.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
No, thank you.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, then let's move to a vote. Councilmember Cave, now how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Okay, Councilmember Juneman.
Make that two. Aye.
Councilmember Knutson.
Here, aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The agenda is approved. Moving on to approval of our minutes. We first have the June 14th, 2021 City Council Workshop Meeting Minutes. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave. The motion to approve the June 14th City Council Workshop Meeting Minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Next, we have approval of the June 14th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I motion approval.
Second. Okay, I'm going to go with motion made by Cave, seconded by Juniman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's move to a vote. Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson.
I abstain, was not present.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The minutes are approved. Moving on to appointments and presentations. We had I'm sorry, this is City Manager Coleman. This is yours, the council calendar update.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm sure that everybody's waiting for the resolution of appreciation for Public Safety Director Nadeau. But before we do that, we do have a couple of calendar items to share with you. The first is that July 12th will be our first live and in-person council meeting, which I know I am looking forward to that. But prior to that, at 6 p.m., we will have a professional photographer in to do headshots of all the council members and staff who would like to have their pictures taken. I highly recommend that all the council members take advantage of this, and we will want a group shot of the council as well. So please plan that. We won't have a workshop, but we will be doing photographs for everybody on that evening. Also, on July 26th, we're going to have a workshop session with the Housing and Economic Development Commission, and where the focus of our topic will be the distribution of the American Recovery Plan funds, and to continue that discussion with council and also including HEDC. On August 9th, we'll have our first review of the 2022 budget. And once we get that shaped up a little bit, there probably will be some correspondence or abilities to have special workshops if we have a need to do so, Mayor. So we can talk about that as we gain some traction here into the summer months where we really get into the budget planning process. In addition to that, under the council comments, I forgot to note that on the administrative hearing process, that has actually been completed and that ordinance has been moved forward to accommodate that new process for administrative hearings. On upcoming community events, the mayor mentioned the 4th of July fireworks. The event that I'm looking forward to the most, I think, coming up this summer is National Night Out. And we will be keeping you apprised of those parties and where they're located as we get closer to that event. But this is an event that most of the council participates in. It's a fun evening. We have a lot of public safety staff, department heads, myself, all out visiting our neighborhoods, and it is a super fun evening. I hope we have a nice day, and more to come on that. And I'll end on that happy note, Mayor. Looking forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks. And that's it, unless you have questions or comments for me.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman, for that report. Let's see if there are any other council comments that you'd like to talk about. Council members, Councilmember Cave.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Juniman.
Yes, Mayor, on National Night Out, when are we going to have a contact person or number or whatever for people to register their parties? Do we know that
Ms.
yet?
Coleman?
Mayor, Councilmember Juniman, I'm not sure. In the past,
Okay.
I think that's been Commander Shortreed, but I'll verify that with Public Safety Director Nadeau, and I'll get you out either an email tomorrow. I'll have Mike put it in the FYI.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
This is Joe, Councilmember Kathy Juniman.
Yes.
Sergeant Paul Tinas is handling that.
Oh,
There was
okay.
something in Maplewood Living to sign up on the website.
Okay.
It's also out on the Facebook page. I reposted it today on
Okay.
Public Safety Facebook page. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Knutson,
No questions.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
No questions, thank you.
You know, City Manager Coleman, one thing from our last meeting, I had added to council comments. It should be reflected as our last meeting, goats.
Oh, that's right, the buckthorn removal. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
thank you for that reminder.
Okay. Thank you for that. And what we have been all looking forward to tonight, moving on our agenda to the resolution of appreciation for Public Safety Director Scott Nadeau. We have a resolution, council members, before us. What we're going to do is this. We're going to first discuss or move the resolution. Then we are going to, I'll read the resolution into the record. Then we are going to have a video tribute to Public Safety Director Nadeau. And then I'm going to give each council member an opportunity to speak. And then we will give, at the very end, we'll give Public Safety Director Nadeau an opportunity to speak as well. So with that, council members, we have a resolution before us.
I move to adopt the resolution of appreciation for Public Safety Director Scott Nadeau.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson, the resolution of appreciation for Public Safety Director Nadeau. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Reluctantly, aye.
Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. For those listening who don't have access to the resolution right in front of them, this is what it says. Whereas the City of Maplewood hired Scott Nadeau as the Public Safety Director August 2017, whereas Chief Nadeau has served the City of Maplewood with honor and integrity during his tenure, whereas Chief Nadeau has brought the strengths of being an achiever, maximizer, strategic thinker, activator, and a healthy amount of competition in pursuit of community connectedness and overall public safety. Whereas Chief Nadeau's community center problem-solving approach led to the launch of several programs that have helped the city provide better services in the areas of community outreach and people experiencing mental health crisis. Whereas Chief Nadeau has ensured the Public Safety Department's members better mirror the demographics of the community they serve. Whereas Chief Nadeau's colleagues throughout the city have benefited from his experience, wisdom, and friendship. Whereas Chief Nadeau built a stronger department. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved for and on behalf of the City of Maplewood, Minnesota, and its citizens that Chief Scott Nadeau, Director of Public Safety, is hereby extended our gratitude and appreciation for his years of service to the City of Maplewood and Minnesota's law enforcement community. So there is our resolution. We have an excellent tribute that our communications department has put together, and let's watch that right now.
Everybody say hi, Chief.
Hi.
Hey guys, how's it going?
I've been around for 34 years, and I will tell you that my last 3.5, 4 years in Maplewood have been some of the best of my career.
He is smart. And let me spell that out for you.
S stands for strategic thinker.
It gives us a chance to work across departments.
He has really, I think, set the course for public safety in our city, and I really appreciate his leadership. He has done so much for transparency, for accountability.
We've been able to accomplish a lot of things as an agency.
So what he brings to the current state of affairs is a calm voice and a reasoning voice, always taking a step back, viewing the entire picture before making decisions.
M stands for mentor for many.
Chief Nadeau is really good at raising the bar, and then every time you think you've raised yourself to that bar, he's good at moving it up to the next notch.
Pushing yourself out of that comfort zone. He's a master at that.
While he has very high standards, he also understands that I'm a father, that I'm a husband, and he supports the entire employee.
So I'm happy to report that Ryland obtained a badge from the dollar store, and his badge pinning ceremony actually took place 2 weeks ago.
There had been a couple different promotional processes that I never engaged in. And I remember him sitting there and asking me, have you considered a sergeant's position with the police department? I'm like, why? I totally enjoy what I do. I'm good at what I do. Why would I want to change that? I just remember that conversation where the light bulb went on, ended up eventually getting promoted to a sergeant.
Now A, he is always saying, that's amazing.
He has a way of breaking the ice.
You have to say action.
That kind of shocks the mind sometimes. But
Scott came in the door and actually apologized to me for effectively taking a position that I had been seeking as well. I thought that spoke volumes to me.
We had an officer that, was arresting someone that had a weapon or had a gun. So we were probably a mile away, and I just remember lights and siren, and I'm driving as fast as I can, and I remember his legs shaking over there. His knee was just bouncing. He's like, Reynolds, you got to go faster. You got to go faster. I'm like, I look over at him. I'm like, that pedal doesn't go down any further than it is. I'm going as fast as I can. So that was the introduction. That's how we started.
I think I met him approximately 30 years ago. I was a young attorney working for LELS, and he was a patrol officer in Brooklyn Center. I think my grandfather said it best. He would probably describe Scott as being full of piss and vinegar.
R is for responsive to residents, the city council, myself, senior management team, his employees. He's always there to help someone or respond to their needs.
For the past 4 years, Scott has provided, for me, probably the most stability to the Maplewood Police Department.
T, this is for big thinker.
He has done some pretty amazing things, some cutting edge things here for our residents, for our businesses in Maplewood.
He's also increased employee engagement, has built important relationships both within the city and with community stakeholders, and he helped create the Multicultural Advisory Committee. He also has assisted with the development of the partnership with Ramsey County for the mental health outreach worker.
And you look at our department as a whole with the new hires that Scott has brought to the agency, a large portion of those have brought that continued diversity that is a reflection of our community.
I was going to borrow Maddie a tie, but I told her later I'm glad I didn't, because it probably would have come down to her belt line. So
a lot of these new officers that come to Maplewood have done the research and sought us out in many cases because they've heard about a lot of the good things that are occurring in law enforcement within the city of Maplewood.
she said, do you know that you stole 2 potential officers away from transit? And I said, that's only because I couldn't find 3.
Although Scott has only been in the city of Maplewood for 4 years, there's no doubt that he has made more changes in 4 years than many chiefs make in double that time.
In looking at the leaders that I know around the state of Minnesota, Scott ranks up there in probably the top 5 chiefs of police, public safety directors that I have known throughout my career.
And I have pretty good insight in watching chiefs, great chiefs that are trying to make change within their agencies. Very, very difficult. It wasn't the bull in the china shop. He had the ability from a personality standpoint, from a management standpoint, to cut through that culture and make significant changes.
You've done a fantastic job, something to be extremely proud of. I'm extremely proud of you. Thank you.
I will miss his leadership and his positive attitude.
Thank you, Scott, for your service and best wishes for your journey ahead.
Thank you, Communications Department. That was a great tribute for Public Safety Director Nadeau. You know, this really is kind of bittersweet because, as you saw in the video, I've known Scott Nadeau for a very long time. And I was so pleased that, you know, he's ending his career, his law enforcement career here in the city of Maplewood. And so with that, I want to hear from our other council members, but Scott, you certainly are going to be missed. Councilmember Cave.
Wow, following that video, I don't know what to say. I think I have just one more letter. It's B, and that would stand for boots. And I don't know what size boots you have, but they're huge. And what you've done to the city, I know the man filling it has worked with you, but he's got some big boots to fill. I hope you enjoy this next chapter of your life. Well deserved. Thank you for all you've done for the citizens, for our police department, our fire department, and our staff here. The short time I got to work with you, you are a wonderful man and blessed wherever you go. Thank you for all you did.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman.
Bittersweet is a polite word. I've given Scott some flack about leaving. I called him a quitter, but obviously that's a joke, sort of. I just wish we had more years with him because of all the wonderful things he's done for us. Thank you is really hollow. It's not enough, but how else do you express it? You have done fabulous things for this city. As your friend said in the video, fantastic job. It's just and I understand where Mike Shortreed is coming from too. I just think the spirit you brought in the door, and it just emanates everywhere you go in City Hall. And I do think that we've had wonderful leaders in the past, and I'm certainly not going to short suit them. And they gave you a good department to work with. But I just think you helped us turn the corner into some of the things that we just need to be doing in this time. And it seemed to go, from an outside view, obviously, but it seemed to go quite smoothly. And I think people who work in the department are feeling different about their job as being in the community rather than just quote unquote protecting. You, in order to serve properly, you have to know your community and be part of it. And I know people are more aware of their police officers now than they've been for a long time. Thank you for all you've done. I wish we could have squeezed more time out of you, but I'm greedy. What can I say? I wish you a good retirement, but somehow I think you're not going to be doing nothing but retiring. You have too much energy and too many creative thoughts and too much to give. Please come back and visit. It's been a wonderful 4 years. Thank you for what you've done for all of us.
Thank you for those words. Councilmember Knudsen.
Yeah, thank you. Scott, I got kind of re-engaged in the city of Maplewood when I was invited to join the EMS task force in 2016. Seems like just yesterday. But what I think is interesting is, it's a good foundation when we started looking deeply into the safety. And, what I've noticed about you is your ability to mentor. And then the ability to gain knowledge from like a Steve Lucan, and then the excitement of Michael Mondor, moving forward. It just really works well with all those people. But what's good is that, as a city councilman, I'm all over the state sometimes and meet other council people and others. And I'm able to tell them, what a great police department and fire department and what a great public safety situation we have in Maplewood. And I'm able to explain that in great detail and offer some help. And I owe that to you. So I really appreciate your service. And I appreciate your contribution and the gift of knowledge that you've given me. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Yes, I would just like to say that I immensely appreciate in the brief time that I've been able to work with Scott Nadeau. He has been a great listener and always inclusive and accepting. And I really appreciated from, obviously before being a council member, seeing the changes in the police department in these last 4 years are definitely noticeable from my perspective and from other folks in the community's perspective that I've heard from. And I will miss him, and I did learn things from him, and so I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge here in Maplewood, and don't be a stranger. Please stay connected with us so we can still learn from each other.
Thank you for those words. We will be closing the book on Scott Nadeau's lengthy law enforcement career. Council members, next meeting, we will be swearing in our new chief, Chief Beardeman. And, we'll have a brand new chapter to start next time. But tonight, we really want to pay tribute to you, Scott, for all that you have done for law enforcement, and for the last 4 years, what you have done for the city of Maplewood, for our residents, for our businesses, and for our staff, because you have been a true leader, and we really have appreciated your dedication to our city and making all of us better. These certainly have not been these aren't easy times for law enforcement, but you have led with honor and integrity, and you have really, I think, positioned us very well. So Public Safety Director Nadeau, let's hear from you.
Wow. The video, your comments, I'm just overwhelmed. You shouldn't make a police officer on the brink of tears. That's not fair. We're not programmed like that. But I'd just like to take this opportunity to really thank the council and our citizens for the opportunity to be your public safety director. It's an amazing community, and I think that we've done some really significant things together. I'd like to give the council credit for much of that. You've given us clear priorities, and whether it's the strategic priorities that you've laid out for us or the in-person meetings, you've been very clear in what your expectations for the community have been. And so it was easy for me and other public safety leaders to kind of craft solutions to that. And importantly, it's been really recognized by our public safety staff that we have enjoyed the support of the council. And I need to look back only, these 4 years, and, the way that we are looking at taking care of problems in our apartment communities to make them more livable, or the way that we've changed our fire department from a part-time and full-time to a career department, and started to work on some of the issues of consolidating fire stations that the Fitch study talked about. Having the EMS training for our law enforcement that has been provided through our fire department under medical direction from region, so that our citizens now often stand in front of the council and talk about how our police officers and our firefighters have worked together to literally save lives. I just couldn't be prouder to have worked in Maplewood and to be given this opportunity. I couldn't be prouder of the public safety staff in police and fire that we have. One of the things that gives me comfort in moving towards retirement after a lengthy career is to know that we have professionals like Brian Beardeman and Michael Mondor who are going to take it to the next level. I have the utmost confidence in these two individuals and the many, many talented public safety staff that we have, that they understand the council's priorities and community engagement and outreach, and in being inclusive and understanding and building those important relationships with our community members. And I think, again, that gives me a lot of comfort to know that we can continue to be really excited about some of the great things that are happening in policing and fire. One of the things that I've said more recently is that while a lot of police departments and public safety departments, just tried to tread water during a pandemic and during social unrest, we actually continued to just work our strategic plan and continue to make investments in our community. And it looked different, whether it was cheering on the staff at St. John's as they went to work during the pandemic, or the Santa parades, or our smaller pop-up Freezy Pop type events. Many of these ideas, most of these ideas now, are not being suggested by me or even department leaderships. Our staff is 100% engaged and understands that value of really just serving our community on any level that we can. So again, my sincere thanks to the City Council for this opportunity. It's been the 4 best years of my career, despite pandemics and social unrest and some questions about reimagining policing. We've accomplished a great deal, and a lot of it comes with your support, and again, those clear council priorities that we could take and adopt and plan for. So thank you, and a shout out to the communications department as well. The video, as you probably know, was a secret. I didn't know that they were working on that, but to see some of my old friends and colleagues, and then some of the folks that I've worked with day to day, it's just, it's heartwarming, and I'm very grateful. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Public Safety Director Nadeau. So with that, council members, rather emotional, and like I said, this is very bittersweet that this is our last meeting with you, but we need to move on to our agenda. Let's move on to the consent agenda. We have 6 items. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
I move approval of consent agenda items 1 through 6.
Moved by Juniman. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Cave. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor?
I'm actually going to jump in here, and I'd like to highlight numbers 4, A, B, and C, and give Mr. Thompson an opportunity to explain that, because I think that that's important that for him to talk about that. We have support of 3 different affordable housing projects proposed for Maplewood, and I'd like to highlight that. So is there
Mayor?
any other, just one second, we're going to go through the round robin.
Okay.
Councilmember Cave, do you have anything else that you'd like to say or highlight in terms of the consent agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Councilmember Juniman?
Thank you. I'd like to highlight number 5, please.
Okay, number 5. Councilmember Knudsen?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Villavicencio?
No, thank you.
Okay, then let's start off with G4, A, B, and C. Mr. Thompson, do you just want to give a little bit of background and explain what is being asked here at this point?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor and Council. What we're asking tonight is for adoption of some letters of support for 3 housing projects in Maplewood that are seeking funding from some state sources to proceed forward with constructing some affordable housing units. So this is early in the process, I will say. But these housing projects, the first is the J.B. Vang project, which is 1310 Frost Avenue. It's the current funeral home that's at the southeast corner of Frost and English. The second is for MWF Properties for 1375 Frost, which is the former Gladstone House. And then the third project is a project proposed by Reuter Walton on the what I would call the Maplewood Marine site and some land owned by the city. So each year, Minnesota Housing issues kind of what they call their super RFP, and it's really a one time a year funding cycle across the state of Minnesota to distribute actually a number of funds. It's not only the federal tax credit program that they administer, but a number of other funding sources that they kind of pool together for that super request for proposals, but bring together a lot of the state's funding to help support the construction of new, in this case, affordable housing units within Maplewood. And so all of these projects would include some level of affordable housing included in each of those projects. There are, well, before I get into what the resolutions say, the second component that, moving forward, two of these would be on land that is currently either partially or fully owned by the city. And so later on the agenda, you'll be considering the purchase agreements with those two projects, the MWF properties and the Reuter-Walton project. But this doesn't certainly end the city's review. Should they be successful in receiving some of the funding from Minnesota Housing, they would still go through our land use application process, and also they are requesting kind of preliminary support for the use of tax increment financing on the city side to help with a local contribution to, again, support those affordable housing units. Again, as we move through the process, there'll be other times the council will see this in different applications and before anything is finalized on any of these projects. The specific ask is really three things: a resolution of support from the council for the project in general, and a support for the application to Minnesota Housing. The second is related to that, just a specific letter from the mayor. And then the third is one of the funding sources comes from the Metropolitan Council. The Livable Communities Account Fund provides some funding. And there's just a kind of a, what I'll call out, some conduit agreements that should that funding be allocated, it would actually come to the city, and then we would provide that funding to each of the developers. And really why this is important is, besides these projects furthering some of our economic development and housing goals, really in the Gladstone neighborhood, these letters of support are really critical to showing local support and providing a competitive application. So we think that in order to be set up to be successful, potentially successful in the funding, the competitive funding pool, these resolutions of support do go a long way to showing Minnesota Housing that the city is at this point behind these projects in support of their application. So we are requesting those three items for all three of the projects as part of the consent agenda here this evening. And Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions if the council has them.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Thompson. Let's move on to Councilmember Juniman requested number 5 be highlighted, and that is Public Works Director Steve Loves.
Yes, Mayor, maybe I could just direct so Steve knows why I did this.
Okay.
It's an important project, that Sterling Bridge, but I just wanted the public to be aware that our staff isn't just plodding through their job, shall we say. There was a grant application put out, and we were selected for some reimbursement. So I would like him to focus on that, please.
Thank you very much. It's almost $500,000. It's important. Mr. Love?
Yep. Yes, Mayor and Council. So this grant is the state's local bridge replacement program. This is a program that doesn't receive funding every year and does have a fairly long wait list on it. We have been working on this since about 2016. Fortunately, we were able to get selected in a year that funding was available. The grant is for just shy of $500,000. This grant will significantly reduce the cost for the city for this project. The project is estimated at a little under $1 million, at $958,000. That's with design and inspection and testing included as well. So we're fairly close to about 50% of this being covered by this grant. So it was just a really great thing for the city to be selected for that.
And thank you for your department's efforts in seeking out that grant. Councilmember Juniman.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say kudos to Steve and his staff for applying and hanging in there. And that's a lot of money to be reimbursed. It's wonderful. And just with a little tongue in cheek, Mayor, perhaps the items under 4, perhaps we should forward that to the county.
You know, the reason I highlighted that was specifically to point out that we really are making efforts to address the general housing shortage in the county. You know, the fact that we have 3 different projects that are coming to us tonight, all in the Gladstone area on Frost Avenue, I think is important, that we really are trying to make efforts to address it. And I would encourage anyone who's interested further in looking at it. You can certainly check out the council packet for tonight. It's got more information on the projects, how many units, what the affordability aspect looks like. And I think truly, you know, Maplewood is making a significant effort in that regard. So council members, let us, we've had a motion and a second concerning the consent agenda. Let us now move to a vote. Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
Councilmember Knudsen.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Moving the agenda tonight, we have no public hearings and no unfinished business. We move on to new business. We have 4 items under new business. The first one is the ordinance amendment to rezone the city's existing planned unit development parcels to PUD fixed district. Mr. Thompson, this is your staff report. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. Again, thank you, Mayor and Council. So tonight, we're really bringing forward to the Council the second step in the amendments to our planned unit development ordinance that kind of come out of is one of our implementation steps in our 2040 comprehensive plan. So just to frame the item in general, you know, the planned unit development ordinance that we have had and the amendments we've made are really an important tool for implementing our comp plan and to ultimately incentivize development that is consistent with that plan and achieves the city's economic development, housing, and sustainability goals. So back in 2020, the council actually adopted a new planned unit development ordinance. And that's kind of what happened first. And what that did is it really changed how we consider and approved planned unit developments should they be proposed in Maplewood. And I won't go through the details of that unless there are questions, but the big change we made is changing the approval process from a conditional use permit to a zoning ordinance amendment or rezoning action to give the city broader discretion, ensuring that projects that move forward as PUDs are consistent with those larger policy goals that we've established in our comp plan. So as a follow-up to the new process, what we're doing is we went through a process of identifying all of the existing planned unit developments, and there are a number of them. And the action we're requesting tonight is to rezone those existing planned unit developments to the new PUD fixed zoning district. And this is really a procedural change. There would be no substantive changes to the existing development regulations that are in those planned unit developments, but rather just kind of implementing that new zoning district for these properties. It is a sizable number. It was several thousand properties that are included in this, and that's not necessarily because we have that many developments that are PUDs, but as those developments happened, oftentimes, for example, in the Legacy Village development, they were subsequently subdivided into many, many parcels. So that's kind of the sheer number is driven by the subdivision that came out of those larger planned unit development agreements. So this would provide, just again, it's a procedural. It just becomes easier for the property owners of these properties, and certainly for our staff to administer the regulations that were adopted in those PUDs. And as I've mentioned, it would not change any of the existing regulations that apply. And then should there be any sort of major change proposed or asked by any of the property owners, they would then be subject to the new PUD district requirements and establishment of that new district. But this action, as I said, would just rezone them to the PUD fixed district. Given the number of properties, we did kind of an expanded community engagement and community outreach for this proposed rezoning. We first sent notice to all the property owners, letting them know about the changes. And then we did hold a community meeting that they were able to attend. It was virtual, where they could ask any questions. We did a brief presentation of the proposed changes and ask any questions. We didn't have a lot of people attend. I think it was a small handful of people had a couple questions. And then we did provide another notice for the public hearing that was held by the Planning Commission just last month, actually just this month in June. The Planning Commission held the public hearing for the rezoning action. There were a number of people on the call, but nobody did speak. And the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the rezoning action as it's proposed before the council tonight. So we do recommend approval of the rezoning action, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for that presentation. Council members, do you have any questions? Councilmember Cave.
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Juniman. Councilmember Juniman, you're on mute.
Sorry. My finger in that button don't get along very well sometimes. Since what used to be a conditional use permit is now going to be processed as a rezoning, and the previous ones, since they were put in as conditional use permits and therefore there were conditions put on the whole process, does any of that change with this inclusiveness in this ordinance?
Mr. Thompson.
Mayor and council, it does not. So the way the ordinance was drafted is, yes, all those initial PUDs by conditional use permit included conditions, and those will carry through as drafted in the ordinance and in that existing zoning district. All of those same conditions, and in fact, those conditional use permits continue to apply to the developments without any change under this rezoning.
So that if there are any issues, in other words, people can still come to us and say it's about that blah blah operating under a conditional use permit. Will you look into this? The same process will be in place, in other words.
Mayor, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Knudsen.
No questions.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Yes. Does this ordinance change? Does it limit the? Does it limit any? What I'm trying to ask is, does it limit like the types of businesses that can be in that area, or is it only zoned then for housing?
Mr. Thompson.
Certainly, Mayor and Councilmember Villavicencio. It's not restrictive. It's not more restrictive for use. So within the existing planned unit developments and in the new districts that they would be rezoned to, any type of use is permitted within that zoning district, provided it's consistent with that original planned unit development. So if it was a housing development, it would still be allowed to be a housing development subject to the densities and development regulations. And if it's a commercial development with regulations around what types of businesses and what types of uses, those would continue forward, but there would be no additional restrictions on types of businesses that could be located there, types of housing units, all of those. There's flexibility within the districts for the types of uses that can exist within any planned unit development property.
Thank you.
And I have no other questions. Council members, we have two motions before us. Let's start with the first one. Would someone like to move that?
I move to approve the ordinance amendment to rezone the city's existing planned unit development parcels to PUD fixed district.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson, the motion to approve the ordinance amendment to rezone the city's existing planned unit development parcels to PUD fixed district. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes. There is a second motion concerning this topic. Would someone like to move that?
I also move to approve the resolution authorizing publication of the ordinance by title and summary.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson, the motion to approve the resolution authorizing publication of the ordinance by title and summary. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
And Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That motion passes. And we move on to our administrative citation ordinance. Item J2. Mr. Thompson, you are the presenter on this topic as well.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we are bringing to you tonight what is really the final draft of an amendment to the existing city code related to administrative offenses and really the issuance of administrative citations for violations of the city code. This was certainly identified by the council earlier this year as a council directive to look into this type of program and implementing it in Maplewood as I would say kind of an additional tool and an enhancement to our code enforcement efforts and our code enforcement program in Maplewood. And I'll walk through the details of the ordinance and how it works and how it will be administered, outline how we think this will provide a really important tool as part of our code enforcement program. So just a brief background. Certainly the city is actively engaged in code enforcement activities and in responding to code enforcement complaints throughout the community. And right now, I would say in our current practices really heavily rely on a criminal citation. I'll talk a little bit about what we do before we get to the citation process. But if we get to a point where a property continues to be non-compliant, our current practices have been our real enforcement tool that we use then is issuance of a criminal citation. And in some cases, we also have done moving forward with abatement. For example, you adopted an action at your last meeting for a particular property around abatement. And the goal, of course, in issuing those citations and any of our code enforcement practices is ultimately to gain compliance and to correct any sort of violation that exists on the property. I think the council talked about it when you gave us the initial direction to explore this program, but we've certainly experienced real significant challenges with the criminal citation process. And that includes that when we issue a criminal citation, it automatically requires court hearings. So it goes through the district court process and similar to any criminal citation, kind of goes through and requires hearings before a judge in district court. We found, therefore it's subject to the district court calendar and their processes and procedures, which is quite lengthy. And for probably good reasons, court enforcement cases aren't always a priority within the district court because they're dealing with a number of criminal complaints as well as other complaints that go through the court process. And so to be frank, they go on for many, many, many months. It's not unusual for those to go on for 6 months, if not longer, as they get delayed through the criminal court process. Meanwhile, the issue goes unresolved, and so there's no movement on, often most times, no movement on correcting the violation as it works that way through the process. And then when it's in that process, it's also very formal. The city's represented by our prosecuting attorney. Certainly the violator has the opportunity to hire an attorney, and should it be founded and they're convicted, it would go on their criminal record. It could potentially go on their criminal record. And so it's not always the best place to adjudicate, frankly, code enforcement violations. And so we've looked at so we said, we think an administrative citation process could work. We actually looked at our code, and there's actually a section in our code today that allows us to issue administrative citations, and we reviewed that with our city attorney's office, Kendi and Graven, and we ultimately identified that there are updates that are needed given the age of our ordinance in order to effectively use it. And so, as I've mentioned, this is meant to be an additional tool, and we can certainly still use the criminal citation process for certain cases and abatement, of course, but administrative citations will be kind of a less formal and cost-effective enforcement option for the city to do. And ultimately, we think it's a good tool to get to our end goal, which is compliance with our ordinance and addressing violations. So before I get into some of the details of the ordinance, did just want to talk a little bit about what our code enforcement process is in Maplewood. We are the vast majority of our cases are generated based on complaints. So they get initiated when a neighbor typically calls and submits a concern or complaint about a property being in potential violation of our code. And once we receive that complaint, we kind of do an initial inspection of the property to review it and confirm whether or not the property is in violation. And then if we find it is, we kind of send a violation letter out to the property owner, which says what the violation is, what the required actions are, and then an appropriate deadline for compliance with the ordinance. And we will continue to do that. That will continue to be included in our code enforcement process. And I will say that, in rough numbers, I would say 90% of the time, that solves the problem. When we provide the notice to the owner of what the ordinance says, what we observed, and what corrective actions are necessary, the initial notification letter usually solves the problem. But we also need additional tools for the smaller portion of properties that don't come into compliance once that once that letter is issued, excuse me. And so we've put 4 options of tools we can use. We can issue a final warning letter. We are now adding an administrative citation process. We can continue to use the criminal citation process if necessary, and also proceed with abatement in certain cases. And how we will make this determination is based on the type of violation and the actions that we ultimately think are best expected to obtain compliance with the ordinance in a timely manner. So what best fits with the results we're trying to achieve. And then we always take into account, of course, the history of the property and any similar or same code violations they have in the past as we consider which option to move forward with. So this is again would be kind of a discretion that we could use on, is it the right tool for the circumstances? So how the administrative citation process will work, if adopted by the council, is we will still send, and in fact, the ordinance requires us to still send that initial violation letter. So, once we get the complaint and we do the site visit and investigation, if we find a violation, we will be required to send an initial violation letter to the responsible party and or the property owner, which gives them, and it's very important, up to 30 days to correct the violation. And a little bit later, I'll talk about the timeframes we will be giving based on different levels. So it's not everybody automatically gets 30 days. It's no more than 30 days to correct that violation. And the only exception is if there's an immediate danger to public health, safety, or welfare, and we determine that there's immediate correction action that's required. So that could be things such as an immediate fire hazard or immediate threat to personal safety. As I said, those violation letters typically solve the problem, but if they don't, and after the deadline is passed and the violation is not corrected, that's when we would then have the ability to issue an administrative citation. And the citation is quite simple. It just needs to include the date, the time, and the nature of the violation, the name of the city official that's issuing the citation, the amount of the fine, how it can be paid, and then outlining that there is an ability to appeal. And then that fine, should it be the fine that's included in the citation, would have to be paid within 14 days. There's included in the ordinance then the right of the person, the offending party, to appeal the citation. But the big difference here is it's not automatic, as it is in the, so a hearing is not automatic, I should say, as it is in the criminal citation process. So it's incumbent on the offending party to, in writing, appeal the citation to the city within 14 days of when that citation is issued. And then the hearing process would actually be administered by the city and outside of the court process. And so the city would actually have outside third-party hearing officers that we would use to hear the appeals. Those are oftentimes, well, they're always attorneys, but they are typically have a background in alternative dispute resolution, administrative law, some sort of background in administering hearings. And so we have up to 45 days to have that hearing scheduled. And then at that, it's a much more informal hearing. So, each side certainly gets its opportunity to present its case, its evidence, testimony, and witnesses, but there's no formal, rules of evidence that would apply in a court setting. And then the hearing officer does have the discretion to review both sides and then make their findings and issue a decision on the outcome of the appeal and they would have to do that within 30 days following the hearing. And they certainly have options. They can find the city was justified in the citation and upheld it. And the fine that was issued, they can amend the penalties, or the citation may be overturned if they find that it wasn't appropriately issued. But this is really, as we worked with our city attorney's office on it, kind of the way we established the due process resolution for people's right to at least appeal on the citation. But as I said, it's not an automatic thing. It's only as requested by the offending party. The ordinance would also outline the city's process for the collection of fees. So as I said, they would have to be, if they don't appeal, it have to be paid within that 14-day period. And then if it's upheld if they do appeal and it's upheld by the hearing officer, any sort of payment would then have to be paid to the city. If they don't, the ordinance provides a number of ways the city to ensure we can collect those fees, either by a lien on the property, a personal obligation of the offending party, or assessing them to their property taxes to ensure that they're collected by the city. Should also add that none of this, the fines are never a way for a property owner to not comply with the ordinance. None of this would allow them to just pay the fine and not then bring the property into compliance. Really, it's meant to be the deterrent, so that if a person gets a letter and says you have to correct this, and they ask the question of themselves, well, what if I don't? At least the administrative citation and the fine associated with it really provides the deterrent to continue with a code violation. And in fact, in the ordinance, we would, if we issue one citation that's still not corrected, have the ability to issue subsequent citations and pursue other actions as we could to ensure that the property is brought into compliance. So it's not the end all and be all, but certainly an important tool to provide a deterrent to complying with to not complying with the ordinance. So we spent a lot of time, we've talked to a number of cities. We know a number, not all, but a lot of cities do use an administrative citation process for code enforcement. Just in recent times, I know the city of St. Paul has referred it to their charter commission for consideration of implementing administrative citation process, and the city of Stillwater closer to us, or also close to us, has also recently adopted a administrative citation process. And so we've talked to a number of cities in the metro that run these programs. They all, I should say, recommend them or see them as a valuable tool, and certainly gave us some good feedback on best practices as we implement ours and as we drafted the ordinance, things we should consider. One thing that was important was just to identify what we kind of put as levels of offense, recognizing that not all code enforcement violations are necessarily the same. So this table outlines what's codified in the ordinance of 3 levels of violation: level 1, level 2, and level 3. And just in our for example, level 1s are kind of those that are easy to correct, more minor violations that are easier to correct. So long grass, you have your garbage cans not stored properly, you're parking on the grass, things that are very easy to correct. Level 2 are a little bit more involved. Examples would include junk or abandoned vehicles, minor amounts of or moderate amounts of exterior storage, and kind of the property maintenance violations. And then level 3 are the much more substantial violations: unsafe, unsanitary living conditions, not obtaining a permit or license from the city, and any sort of unsecured structure or dangerous structure. And so this table just outlines kind of in the second column, I should say, what our kind of internal operating compliance timelines will be. So I mentioned earlier that we will say that the ordinance says up to 30 days, but it's not always 30 days. So we've put these kind of guidelines out there. It would always be based on the specific circumstances of the property and those factors I referenced. But we wanted to put kind of our general practices of the timeline for the deadline we expect compliance with the property. So you'll see level 1 would be within 5 days, level 2 would be within 14 days, and level 3 would be within up to that 30-day max. And then we think there's also a benefit to having different fine levels for those. So this would be included in the ordinance as an amendment to the fee schedule on what those fines would be in the administrative citation. So for the first offense, for level 1 would be $50, level 2 $100, and level 3 would be $400. And each of those would then be doubled if there's a second offense within the same 24-month period, and then doubled again if there's a same or the same offense within, again, a third offense within the same 24-month period. And the only reason the third one doesn't double on that third offense is because in the ordinance, the maximum fine we can assess in an administrative citation is $1,000. So those fine amounts are included, as I mentioned, in the ordinance amendment tonight as an amendment to the city's fee schedule to adopt as the city's practice. So I've really gone through this. There are some exceptions in the ordinance generally the city would have discretion on when to use the right tool, whether we use just another warning letter, whether we issue an administrative citation, whether we continue to do a criminal citation, or whether we just proceed with abatement. Certainly the city has that discretion, but in terms of administrative citations, there would be exceptions to traffic violations, code violations related to business licensing, and then anything that's preempted by state law. As I mentioned, this is the amendment to the current ordinance, provided more detail of what the appeal process is and how it will be handled, what the process is for continuing violations and the cumulative penalties, and then adopt kind of that distinct levels of violation with the associated fees. So as we've done this work, talked to other cities and looked at best practices and worked with our city attorney's office, we think administrative citations are kind of a missing tool to our code enforcement program, and think it would be a strong benefit to adopt this practice to be able to gain compliance in a quicker manner and address some of the issues we've had with our criminal process. So with that, Mayor, we are recommending the council adopt the ordinance that's included in your packet, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I will say that as mayor, the most common contact that I get from our residents is about troubled properties in our communities. And it has been repeated to me on numerous occasions how frustrating residents are that the process that we currently use, while we're relying on the courts to address these troubled properties, it takes a very long time. And quite frankly, as a retired attorney, our courts are just not necessarily equipped. This isn't their sweet spot, is dealing with whether or not a property is, someone, has all sorts of tires and junk cars on their property, whether or not the house, appears to be, a problem hoarding house. These are just not issues that our courts are necessarily comfortable with or adept at handling. And I will just tell you that it takes a very long time. So I personally am very pleased that we are taking this proactive approach. I also like the fact that we have very clear, detailed due process. I think that this will be a very fair process for us, and it will be an important tool to help us with those properties that just seems to, it certainly is a drain on staff time because it takes so long for these things to be resolved the way we're currently doing it with the court system. So thank you for this. Thank you, staff, for putting this together. So let's see if there are any questions or comments from council. Councilmember Cave.
Mayor, I just want to say I would 100% agree with everything you said. There's no need to repeat it. And I'm really glad we have this in the process. Thank you, staff.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman.
Yes, Mayor, it's about time we give staff more tools. I think they're just as frustrated as the neighbors sometimes that they can't help people any faster. So I think this is a really good tool.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Councilmember Knudsen.
It makes good sense. I support it.
Thank you. Councilmember Villavicencio.
I would like to thank staff as well for bringing this forward. I think that having another tool is definitely needed. And I hope that in the future, possibly we could even expand it to be more proactive, because I think, as everybody has said before, it is a huge issue. And I'm wondering if we could even partner with any organizations in the area, to even offer people chore services or an independent living services worker, because I know that a lot of times in the work that I've done in community is that there's a bigger issue going on than just junk in the yard. And so I think, I personally would be willing to try to look at this issue further and see if we can, come together and improve this issue, because I think that the staff has bigger things to work on, and we need to come together as a community and make it better for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Council members, there are two motions in our packet. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to approve the ordinance amendment regarding the city's administrative citation process.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the ordinance amendment regarding the city's administrative citation process. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
Councilmember Knudsen.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes. We have a second motion. Would someone like to make that?
I also move to approve the resolution authorizing publication of this ordinance by title and summary.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave. The motion to approve the resolution authorizing publication of the ordinance by title and summary. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
Councilmember Knudsen.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes. And we have, council members, created a new tool for staff in terms of working through this issue of troubled properties. We have, moving on to our agenda, we have a purchase agreement with MWF Properties for sale of properties at 1375 Frost Avenue and 1900 Clarence Avenue. Mr. Thompson, this is your report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this, as you introduced, is a purchase agreement for some city-owned property for a new housing development in the Gladstone neighborhood. And it is one of the projects that we talked a little bit earlier that's making an application with Minnesota Housing for the state financing for affordable housing construction. The council and the EDA have reviewed previously a term sheet or letter of intent with MWF Properties to purchase two properties. One is 1375 Frost, which is the former Gladstone House, and then 1900 Clarence Street, which is a parcel that's actually located on the south side of Frost Avenue, adjacent to the Philippine Center, both owned by the city. MWF actually also has an agreement in place with the Philippine Center to do a land swap where the developer would get the land on the north side of Frost Avenue adjacent to the Gladstone House from the Philippine Center in exchange for the land that the city owns, which would serve as the Philippine Center's parking lot. The project they're proposing on the site is a 57-unit multifamily residential project. It would be all housing, so it's a multifamily project comprised of affordable housing units. As I mentioned, they are requesting a tax credits from Minnesota Housing, as well as tax increment financing from the city. The specific terms in the purchase agreement, which is before the council tonight, calls for a sale price of $450,000 with a due diligence period running through the end of this year, and the developer securing the commitments in the development agreement with $10,000 in earnest money to the city, half of which would go hard or would not be refundable on July 20th, which is the date that the tax credit application would be submitted to Minnesota Housing. There are two 90-day extensions allowed to the due diligence period, and I know we talked about this when the term sheet came forward, and that's really only related to the financing sources that they may use. If they also get awarded some financing from Minnesota Housing, finalizing that financing just takes additional time. So it's not a given. It's just should they be awarded the tax credits and the financing from the state may need some additional time period just to finalize that financing. But once the due diligence is completed, the closing date would be within 30 days of that expiration. So all of these terms are consistent with the term sheet that was previously reviewed by the council and the EDA and written in the full purchase agreement that's been drafted by our city attorney's office. So with that, we are recommending approval of the purchase agreement, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Let's see if there are any questions. Councilmember Cave.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Juniman.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Knudsen.
No, thanks.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
None, thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions. Is there a motion, council members?
I motion to approve the purchase agreement with MWF Properties for the sale of properties at 1375 Frost Avenue East and 1900 Clarence Avenue North.
Second.
Everyone weighed in. Okay, I'm going to go with what I heard first. Motion was made by Councilmember Cave, seconded by Councilmember Juniman. The motion to approve the purchase agreement with MWF Properties for the sale of properties at 1375 and 1375 Frost Avenue East and 1900 Clarence Avenue North. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Then let's go to a vote. Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
Councilmember Knudsen.
Aye.
And Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. The motion passes, and we approved the purchase agreement. The next item is another purchase agreement with Reuter Walton for the sale of property at 1160 Frost Avenue. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So just down the street from the last property at 1160 Frost is some vacant land that's owned by the city that's directly west of the Gladstone Savannah and directly adjacent to Maplewood Marine, which is a privately owned property. So Reuter Walton, the developer, has a purchase or an agreement to purchase property from Maplewood Marine, and is also seeking to purchase the vacant land from the city adjacent to that to consolidate those two sites and to develop the property into a multifamily residential project. This project actually has kind of two options. As we have talked about in the consent agenda, they are also applying to Minnesota Housing for tax credits in the current round of funding, and for an affordable housing project. And if they are successful in that, the proposed project would be constructed. If they're not able to secure tax credits, this developer does have kind of an alternate option to develop market rate housing on the sites. And so because of that, the terms of this purchase agreement are longer than the other purchase agreements that the city has in place for development. The council and EDA have also reviewed term sheets and the letter of intent for this development, and the city attorney has drafted the purchase agreement that is consistent with those initial terms. So the sale price would be $250,000 for the city's property. The due diligence period running through the end of this year, December 31st of 2021. Also with $10,000 in earnest money to secure the commitments. And then it does include the option to extend the due diligence period to November 1st of 2022, which would require an additional $10,000 in earnest money. And that's to accommodate the timeline of should the project not receive tax credits and they move forward with a market rate project in lieu of the affordable housing project. And then it does call for a closing date within 30 days of the expiration of the due diligence period. So with that, staff recommends the approval of the purchase agreement with Reuter Walton, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Let's see if there are any questions. Councilmember Cave.
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Juniman.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Knudsen.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
None, thank you.
And I have no questions as well. Councilmembers, is there a motion?
I move to approve the purchase agreement with Reuter Walton for the sale of property at 1160 Frost Avenue.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave. The motion to approve the purchase agreement with Reuter Walton for the sale of property 1160 Frost Avenue East. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's vote. Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
Councilmember Knudsen.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Those are two exciting projects in our Gladstone area, and both of them passed tonight. So council members, we have no further items on our agenda, and I'm happy to say that this is our last, hopefully this is our last virtual meeting and doing a round robin closing things out. So let's go through the round robin one last time for final comments. Councilmember Cave.
Just want to wish everyone, well, I'll see you after the 4th of July. So happy 4th of July and stay safe.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to say I share your enthusiasm for coming back, but I got to say, not exactly. Yes, part of me wants to, and the other part says, I won't be able to bring my dog. I want you to know he's been a loyal council attendee for about the last 8 months. he insists on being in this room while I'm at the meeting. I'm not sure what that's all about, but he should get some kind of a, I suppose, award for being the only dog to attend meetings. And it's kind of nice to have him here at my feet. And I guess I can't do that at City Hall. But I'm really happy with all the things that happened tonight. It was really a really good agenda if you look at all the things we were able to do. And it's just another illustration of, even though we haven't been together, we haven't stopped doing things for this city and in this city. And it also points back to what our staff has been able to generate for us and what they have done every day since this whole thing started. We have not failed to move on. And I think we should be proud of that. And it says a lot about everybody involved, but particularly the staff. So I think we should thank them wholeheartedly for keeping us moving and still giving us good things to do. And I echo what Councilmember Cave said, have a safe and happy 4th of July. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Knudsen.
Yeah, I'm anxious to get back to the council chambers and hope that my sport coats still fit.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Well, I just want to say that I'm excited for the 4th of July and the fireworks going on. And if anybody's going to the park or on their way by on the 4th, make sure you beep or wave at me because I live right by the park. So everybody stay safe, and I can't wait to try this out in person.
Thank you. And I want to thank staff, acknowledge all of your hard work. Boy, we pivoted a number of times, but we did not skip a beat. We have done some really amazing business for our city. So thank you. And I do look forward to being in person. Yes, it will be a completely different rhythm, but we can move forward. And I think that, that is really, for me, a really great sign that we are coming out of all of this. So with that, happy 4th of July, everyone. And we will see you in person on July 12th. So thank you. And we are adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.